so we can end early. So again, today I'll be talking about the early empires, and our focus will be on the one of the earliest empires in history, which is the Persian Empire. So this is about 500 BC to 1000 BC. Okay, first let's define what is an empire. So the term empire it refers to a central state that exercises political control over a large amount of territory that's containing many diverse groups. Alright, so often this centralized power they rules from one or several capital cities. So for an empire to grow, one state has to take control of other states or groups of people. For example, if you are, let's say, Philippines and you wanted to build an empire, so you have to conquer neighboring countries. Let's say Indonesia, Malaysia, China. Okay, then before you can declare that we are we have an empire. Okay, asabiya, or the social solidarity, is one of the most important factors that helps the empire succeed, and also the reason why they fall. Okay, so when we say asabiya, it's the strength of the state. Okay, it depends not only on the material factors of a country or a city, like let's say population, the size or the wealth, but also on the moral or the willingness of the citizen to work together for the common good. Now, since asabiya means social solidarity, so if a country, or I can say a civilization, would like to create an empire, its citizens should act as one, meaning they are willing to do everything for the goal to be met. So the bond or asabiya, they exist at any level in civilization. So starting from the nomadic society to city-states and then to empires. So asabiya, they said how it's most strong in the nomadic phase and decreases as a civilization advances. So as this asabiya declines, another more compelling asabiya may take place. The civilization rise and fall. So in history, it describes the cycle of asabiya as they play out. Now, one of the oldest empire established in the world is the Persian Empire. So the Persian Empire was built largely through military conquest. So this empire became one of the largest, stretching from Europe up until the India's Indus Valley in the east. Okay, so the Persian Empire was a globally hub of culture, also in religion, in science, art, and technology. So it lasted for about 200 years until it fell to the invading armies of Alexander the Great. Now, how did the Persians build and maintain a tremendous empire, and who were the important leaders, and what are their contributions to our history? So the Persian Empire based the empire on tolerance and diplomacy, so they relied mostly on their military. So ancient Persia right now is what we call the modern Iran today. So this is Iran, and Iran is called Persia before. Okay, so the Persian Empire, again, is one of the largest empires. As you see here on the map, the one colored in orange, these are the coverage or the area of the Persian Empire. Included here from Europe to India to Egypt. So imagine the vast territory of the Persian Empire. So at its height, the Persian Empire stretched from Europe's Balkan Peninsula. Okay, wait sa akin, nag-chat. Okay, it's Camillus. Okay, saan nagani ko? Okay. So at its height, the Persian Empire again stretches from Europe. Okay, but it's known to be as Bulgaria, Romania, and Ukraine now, up until the Indus River Valley. So that's in India, here, and also in South Egypt, which is here. So the Persians were the first people to establish regular routes of communication due to the vast territory of this empire, and also they built many roads and developed the world's first postal service. So the first Persian Empire is founded by Cyrus the Great. That's around 550 BC. So Cyrus the Great was the leader of one such tribe and began to defeat nearby kingdoms including Media, Lydia, and Babylon. So after conquering them, they joined them into one rule. So the first Persian Empire under Cyrus the Great soon became the world's first superpower. It united under the government of three important sites in the early civilizations, which is the Mesopotamia, the Nile Valley, and the Indus Valley. So that's how powerful Persian Empire was. Well, what's good about Cyrus the Great is that he's very kind. So he was able to manage a vast empire due to tolerance. So he used tolerance to keep the peace, and he seemed to be like a liberator. So he allowed the people he conquered to keep their local customs and traditions. For example, if he were able to conquer Buddhism or Buddhist-centered country, he will let them continue their religion instead of converting to what they are following. So shown here on this popular quote about King Cyrus, it shows here that Cyrus is God-fearing, which reflect to its kindness to the people he conquered. Though he killed a lot of people, but still after he conquered them, he will let them still do their traditions and culture. Now, one of the most popular Persian archaeological site is the Persepolis. This is situated somewhere in southern Iran. It is the world's greatest archaeological sites and one of the UNESCO's World Heritage Sites. So this is the capital city of Persia, Persepolis. Now this is what Persepolis looks like now before. So it was built upon a massive terraces by King Darius. It was decorated with ornamental facade, and it has different carvings of the most famous person in Persia. Okay, so this is what is left on that building, the Persepolis and the city. And its popular architectural art is the column. So the column has three parts: the capital, shaft, and base. And you can see most of this in one of the audience hall in Persepolis. So maybe in the future you'll go to Iran, just visit this one here. You'll see many columns. They call it the Apadana Hall. It has 6 feet tall columns, and some of the columns they have these bowl-shaped tops. Can you see? Yeah. Alright, since Persia is now called modern Iran, many people think that the ancient Persia is synonymous with Islam. Though Islam is one of the dominant religion in the Persia, however, the Persian Empire was shaped by a different religion. They call it the Zoroastrianism. So it was named after a Persian prophet, Zoroaster. Okay, this is the world's one of the world's first monotheistic religion, and it's still practiced today as a minority religion in some parts of Iran and some parts of India. Okay, so this is Zoroastrianism. Now, how did Cyrus and Darius keep control of such a vast empire? So what they did to control a vast territory is they broke them up into provinces, and each provinces are ruled by a royal governor, which they called the satraps. These satraps, they were loyal to the emperor and did his biddings. So the basic rule of governance was based upon the loyalty and obedience of the satraps to the central power, which is the king, and the satraps controls and should be complied with the tax laws. Now, to make sure that these governors will follow the king's order and will not rebel or do corruptions, the king created a royal spies, or also called the king's eyes or the king's ears. So the royal spies is a separate system. There are inspectors, okay, and these inspectors have their own armies and could move against even a military commander. Now, this system of royal spies is very effective in preventing rebellion, corruption, and harsh rule, and it was even copied again and again, even in the modern times. Now, when a new king came to power, which is King Darius, he created a network of roads connecting the different urban cities in the Persian Empire, and he called it the Royal Road. So the Royal Road is a 1,677 miles with 111 relay stations, where officials and merchants traveling on the Royal Road to do the king's business, they are entitled for free food and lodging along the way. So this Royal Road could be traveled in a week by a horseman or a month by a caravan. Now this is how the Royal Road looks like, the one in green. So it connected different urban cities within the empire. Now with this Royal Road, trading, communication, and postal service became easier during the Persian Empire. So this is how the Royal Road enabled a ruler through easier communication and trading. So after the death of King Cyrus, his son Cambyses inherited his throne. So while his son was away in Egypt, someone is pretending to be his brother tried to control over the empire. And then Cambyses died while returning from Egypt, and to remove this pretender, one of the king's bodyguard, Darius, removed the pretender and took over the empire. So Darius the Great, or Darius II, established himself as the sole ruler of Persia and reconquered the rebellious region, growing the Persian Empire to its great extent. So he's one of the greatest military men. He even expanded the empire by 500 miles, but unfortunately, King Darius was not able to conquer Greece. So King Darius did the first Persian War, which is what we call the Battle of Marathon. Now the Battle of Marathon was fought because the Persian army wanted to defeat the Greek that supported the uprising in Ionia. So Ionia is what we call now the modern Turkey. They are against the Persian Empire. Now during the Battle of Marathon, Athenians have won, but they were not able to destroy all the Persian army. So they have made plans before the battle that if they won, they would get word back to Athens as soon as possible, because they knew that Persian's fleet was surely to sail around Attica. So ang goal nila here after the Battle of Marathon is to go back to Athens, inform the people that Persian army might attack them. Now this is what happened during the Battle of Marathon. Now this is the Persian army versus the Greek armies. Okay, so this is how they were able to defeat the Persian Empire. Now, after the Greek won the Battle of Marathon, the commander, or the Greek commander, Miltiades, he sent a young soldier named Pheidippus to take a word back to Athens. So Pheidippus ran the entire distance of 42.192 kilometers. He shouted, "We have won," and he fell dead of exhaustion. So in his memory, the event marathon was included among the contest since the first contemporary Olympic Games. So this is where the name marathon came from, in memory of the young soldier. So the result of the first Persian War, so King Darius lost, and Persia continued to lose its power and to expand. Okay, so King Darius was very furious, and he wanted to do another attack against Greece. Unfortunately, he died, but his son Xerxes advanced on the Greece with a huge expeditionary force. So Xerxes is the son of King Darius. So after the death of King Darius, Xerxes became a dictator. He's different from King Darius and King Cyrus because he was not tolerant, and he wanted to conquer the Greece at all cost. So he started the Second Persian War. Now the Second Persian War happened in the Battle of Thermopylae. So if you have watched the movie 300, so the movie is based on this event. So Thermopylae, it means the hot gates, where 300 Spartans held off 1 million troops of the Persian Empire. Now the purpose of that is to delay the Persian armies to go to Athens so that the people there can evacuate. So this is the Thermopylae, the pass of Thermopylae, where 300 Spartans meet with the 1 million Persian army. So this is how it looks like. Again, the purpose why they meet the Persian army here is for the Athens, so the people in Athens to have more time to evacuate. So if you wanted to know more about the Battle of Thermopylae, it's better to watch the movie 300. There, it will tell you all the stories and how unfortunately Spartans was killed by the Persians. So one of the best armies of Persians, they call them the Immortals, and they said that they are invincible. Spartans prove otherwise. So the Battle of Thermopylae, unfortunately, the Greeks lost. So all 300 Spartans were killed, and then the Persian armies went straight to Athens. Fortunately, the people of Athens evacuated and went to the island of Salamis. Now in the island of Salamis, another battle was held. So the Athenians forced a naval battle in the Bay of Salamis using one of the famous ancient Greek warship. They call it the Greek trireme. Now this battleship were they said considered as the fastest, deadliest ships in the ancient world. So the Greek trireme, they had 3 oars or 3 tiers of oars in them, so that's why this is considered as the deadliest. So the Battle of Salamis, if you have watched the sequel of 300, katong 300, The Rise of the Empire, it was inspired by this event. So it was a naval battle between Greek and Persian forces in the Saronic Gulf here. So the Greek had recently lost the Battle of Thermopylae at this time, and then the Persian army went on a rampage. So Magnesia. So what happened during the Battle of Salamis? So Persians were bottlenecked in the small bay of Salamis because the Greek commander Themistocles lured the Persian fleet into a narrow waters, and because of that, most of the Persian ships have difficulty maneuvering. And because of this, the Greek triremes attacked furiously those ships of Persia, and the Greeks sank about 300 Persian vessels while losing only 40 of their own. So the Battle of Salamis was considered as the first great naval battle recorded in history. So because of that, King Xerxes cancelled his plan to do land offensive for a year, and that gives more time to the Greeks, okay, to unite against him. So the result of the Second Persian War, Xerxes was lost. So Persia had to retreat home in failure. Never again did Persia expand. Now after 150 years of Persian history, it shows slow decline because of rebellions and corruptions from ineffective rulers. Now there's also a lot of invasion happen on the Persian Empire, including King Philip II of Macedonia. He tried to invade Persia. Unfortunately, he was murdered before he completed his invasion. However, his son Alexander earned his title Alexander the Great after he defeated King Darius III, which is the last emperor or king of the Persian Empire. So that happened on November 333, where Alexander the Great and his trusted general defeated the Persian king on the uneven coastal plain south of Issus. So that was the end and the fall of the Persian Empire, and also that's where Alexander the Great story started.